The first time I told him I was leaving, he laughed like it was a bad joke. The second time, he slammed his whiskey glass down so hard the rim cracked. And I realized, oh God, he wasn't going to let me go that easily. I should have known better. Working for Ethan Caldwell, New York's most ruthless attorney, wasn't just a job, it was a trap. From the first day, he made it clear I was his. Not just in the office but in every aspect of my life. And like a fool, I let myself believe I could walk away without consequence. Tell me you're kidding. He'd said that night, leaning against the window of his penthouse, the city lights reflecting off the glass like 1,000 burning eyes. His tie was undone, his shirt open at the collar. But nothing about him looked vulnerable. He was a storm in a tailored suit. I'm serious, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. My voice shook, though I tried to hide it. He studied me, the way predators study prey. Slow and deliberate. You think you can just quit me? I hated the way my pulse jumped at his words. He wasn't just my boss. He was the man who had pulled me into late-night strategy sessions that turned into whiskey-soaked confessions. The man who had kissed me once in the silence of his office and then pretended it never happened. He was the man who knew every flaw in me and still wanted to keep me caged by his side. And Item ITI was the idiot who had let him. The truth was, leaving Ethan wasn't about the job. It was about me finally trying to reclaim my life. The endless hours, the suffocating pressure, the way his presence filled every room until I couldn't breathe it had all become too much. But what haunted me most wasn't his power or his temper. It was the moments when the mask slipped, when his hand lingered too long on mine, when his eyes softened with something dangerously close to tenderness. That was what I couldn't bear, the possibility that underneath all his control, there was a man I could love. So I ran. Or at least, I tried to. But Ethan Caldwell didn't let people run. 3 days after I turned in my resignation, I found him waiting outside my apartment. He leaned against his black car like he owned the entire street. A cigarette between his fingers. The night air curling smoke around his face. "Get in," he said, not even looking at me. I froze. "Ethan, this is insane. You can't just get in." His tone left no room for argument, and against every shred of common sense, I did. The car ride was silent, heavy with the things neither of us dared to say. His hand rested on the gearshift, inches from mine, and I hated myself for wanting him to close the distance. I hated him for knowing it. When we finally stopped, it wasn't at the office. It wasn't even at his penthouse. He drove us out of the city, past the highways and into the kind of quiet suburbs I thought he'd never set foot in. The house he pulled up to was unfamiliar, modest compared to his usual grandeur. "What is this?" I asked, my voice sharp to mask my fear. Ethan turned to me, his expression unreadable. "This is where I grew up." I blinked. Of all the power plays, I hadn't expected this. He killed the engine and stepped out. And for a moment, I just sat there, stunned. This was Ethan Caldwell, the man who could dismantle a corporation with a single lawsuit, showing me the ghosts of his past. And whether I liked it or not, it meant he wasn't going to let me walk away without seeing the parts of him he kept hidden. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and old wood. Family pictures lined the walls. Ethan as a boy, grinning awkwardly, his parents smiling proudly beside him. I'd never imagined him like this, stripped of the armor he wore in courtrooms and boardrooms. Why are you showing me this? I asked. He poured himself a drink. His movements slower than usual. More careful. Because you think you know me. You think I'm just power and money and control. But you don't have a damn clue who I really am. I swallowed hard. Then show me. But don't expect me to stay. His eyes locked on mine. Dark and unflinching. That's the problem, isn't it? You don't get to choose. Not with me. And there it was, the truth I'd been running from. Ethan didn't just want me as an assistant. He wanted me as something else entirely. Something permanent. But what scared me most wasn't that he wanted it, it was that a part of me wanted it too. I didn't sleep that night. Not because the bed in Ethan's childhood home was uncomfortable, but because every time I closed my eyes, I felt his presence lingering in the room next door. The man who terrified me, infuriated me, and yet, God help meth man, I couldn't stop wanting. By morning, the silence between us had become unbearable. He was at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, sipping coffee like it was any other day. But when his eyes met mine, I saw something raw flicker across his face. You think I dragged you here just to scare you? He said finally, his voice low. But the truth is, I didn't know what else to do. You keep slipping through my fingers. And I don't. He trailed off, shaking his head. I don't know how to let you go. For a long moment, I just stood there, my heart pounding. This was Ethan Caldwell, the man who could break anyone in a courtroom, who never bent, never faltered, looking at me like he was one word away from falling apart. Ethan, I whispered, my throat tight. You can't own people. You can't control everything. Not me. He laughed bitterly. That's rich. Coming from you. Do you think I don't see it? The way you look at me. The way you let me close. Even when you're already halfway out the door. You say you don't want me. But you've never once told me no. That hit me like a punch. Because he was right. I'd never told him not when he kissed me. Not when his hand found mine under the table. Not even when I packed my things to leave. I wanted him, but I was terrified of what that meant. I moved closer, until I was standing on the other side of the table. My voice was unsteady, but my words were clear. I never told you no, Ethan. But I never told you yes either. And that's the difference. You can't just decide for both of us. He flinched, like I'd struck him. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned with something I couldn't name. Then say it now. He demanded. Say yes. Say you want me. Or say no and walk out that door. But don't stand there pretending you don't feel this. The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. The faint hum of the refrigerator. My entire life seemed to balance on that single moment. And then I said it. Yes. His breath caught. And for once, Ethan Caldwell, the man who always had the perfect argument, the perfect strategy, the perfect words, was speechless. I stepped around the table, my hand trembling as I reached for his. He didn't move at first, just stared at me like he couldn't believe I was real. Then, slowly, he laced his fingers with mine. The kiss that followed wasn't like the stolen ones in his office or the desperate ones after long nights of work. It was something new, something terrifying and tender all at once. His lips were softer than I remembered. His hand steady on the small of my back, grounding me. For the first time, it didn't feel like a battle. felt like surrender. We spent the rest of the day in that fragile, dangerous peace. He showed me the backyard where he used to play baseball, the room where he studied late into the night before law school. And in each place, I saw pieces of him I'd never been allowed to see before. Not the powerful lawyer. Not the ruthless strategist. Just Ethan, the boy who had once wanted more than the world would ever give him. By the time we drove back to the city, the air between us had shifted. It wasn't perfect, and maybe it never would be. But it was real. Weeks passed. I didn't go back to being his assistant, but I didn't leave his life either. We learned, painfully, clumsily, how to be something more than boss and employee, more than predator and prey. He learned to loosen his grip, and I learned that letting someone close didn't mean losing myself. There were still fights, of course. Ethan didn't change overnight. He still had that sharp edge, that hunger for control. But now, when he pushed too far, I pushed back. And instead of breaking, we bent toward each other. One night, months later, I found myself standing in his penthouse again, the city lights glittering through the glass. He came up behind me, his hand brushing mine, and for once, there was no fear in my chest, just warmth. "You're still here," he murmured, almost in disbelief. I smiled, leaning into him. "And I'm not going anywhere." He kissed me then, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that said all the things neither of us could put into words. And for the first time since the day I told him I was leaving, I knew I'd finally found where I belonged. Not because he wouldn't let me escape, but because I didn't want to. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.